biggest guest we've ever had, and I am absolutely thrilled that he is here. Raven from Nephilim Death Squad. This is a big freaking deal for me, brother. Thank you very, very much for coming on. It's huge for me. I really am. I greatly appreciate this shit, dude.
Thank you for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Nah, this is great. Real quick, we usually start every show with a quick prayer, so just give me 1 second.
Sure.
Lord, guide my words tonight. Help us do your will now and forever. Amen.
Amen.
All right. All right. All right. All right. Dude, for the 5 people that might be watching this that don't know who you are, bro, do you want to maybe introduce yourself, tell them where they can find you and what you do?
Sure. So, first off, thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm Raven. Because people ask why that is. My last name is Corbo, and that's what Corbo means. Actually, it means Raven. And I am one half of Nephilim Death Squad, and it's a conspiracy show. It's a comedy show, and it's all done through the Christian lens. It's kind of like more of a Mike Heiser worldview. So, for those that don't know, it includes the idea that the Nephilim were hybrid beings, the result of fallen angels intermingling with human women, and in the way that Michael Heiser frames it, that little key there informs a lot of our worldview. Does a really great job of helping us to understand a lot of not only supernatural phenomenon and let's say like the pantheons of antiquity and things like that, but also conspiracy theories. I think it's a great piece of the puzzle that informs the why, which is the question that so many people have as they thumb through all the various conspiracy theories that seem to be really doing their thing in this last year. So yeah, that's that. You can find Nephilim Death Squad anywhere that you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. We're not on Rumble. We stopped doing that. I don't know. Rumble just felt gay, and so we moved away from that. But yeah, that's it.
I'm curious about the Rumble thing. Can you expand? Is it like just there's nobody there, there's no money there, or is there something else that we should know as far as even putting content on there?
No, I mean, I don't think there's anything necessarily nefarious. I think if you look at Rumble and the content creators that they promote and that really get the spotlight on their platforms, it's a little embarrassing. Like I kind of find, Dan Bongino to be a little bit embarrassing. And, I'm not saying that the Dr. Disrespect guy is definitely, some sort of a predator. But while he was in the midst of being alleged a predator, they were just blasting that guy. When it just, to me, seems like if crimes against children are involved, maybe you would just kind of chill for a second and not do some of your most aggressive promotion of a character, during that conversation. But and then what's the word that I'm looking for? The way that they interface with like platforms maybe like this or platforms like StreamYard, they require an extra layer of work that like say YouTube doesn't or other platforms. And what we found is for whatever reason, man, we skyrocketed real early in Rumble in our I guess you could say career. And then all of a sudden we plateaued super hard. And there was nothing that we could do that could, increase our subscriber count or seemingly reach a new audience. And the final straw rather, in the camel's back was 2 instances where we had communicated with the owners of Rumble in order to have them on our side for live events, Bohemian Grove. We had a couple of promises made to us about, I don't know, being on the front page, things of that nature. And we're in regular correspondence with them, their private cell phone numbers. And then when the time comes, they just go, yeah, man, we passed the word on to our team. I know you're saying you're not on the front page. I know you sold live views to your event exclusively on Rumble. And I understand that you're saying that for some reason you're not on the front page, but it's out of our hands. We've done everything that we could do. So they promised me a thing. They took the money from the thing after we held up our end of the deal, but they never made good on their promise. So after that, I said, you know what, man, it's just not a place that's worth being. And to be perfectly honest, I kind of think it might be dying. Either that or that's just my wishes for them.
with that said, everything you just explained, that's all completely understandable. The biggest problem I have with anybody in general is whenever you're lying to me. If you
Yeah.
bullshit me and if you lie to me, I'm done with you. I don't give a shit who it is. So I mean, I totally get that, especially if they're gonna, you're trying to build something on their platform and they make promises. That ain't right.
Yeah.
Um, all right, Drew, you want to say hi real quick?
Yeah, what's up, world? Drew, what's my X handle that I still don't use? Shit show
Yeah,
co-host.
very professional. Welcome to the shit show.
Yeah, we're living up to that. We're really embracing that title. Shit show co-host on X, at Luminary Mixdown on Instagram. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. Happy to be part of this. I thank you as well, Raven. Appreciate you coming on, and I'm looking forward to building with you guys.
Before we get started, I just want to say, Stacks, the one of the reasons that I did this, that I appeared on your show, is because you were part of a community that was really, how do I want to put this? In the beginning, when we were just starting Nephilim Death Squad, like any show, like any podcast, it is hard to get traction. And so I have a lot of gratitude for the people that were like in the chat. I see a lot of them in your chat currently, who were there real early to help this thing get legs and start moving. You were one of those people. And so you supported us. And so I'm happy to be here because of that.
Yeah. I am thrilled to see your guys' success. I really am. I know that can be just like people say stuff, but it makes me happy to see decent people do well on a subject that I think is really important, especially trying to understand that, we as a society have gotten so far away from God and understanding, what that means. And it's like, it was actually going to be part of what I was going to try and touch on today, but just a message I think is super important. And the idea in thinking outside of the box. See, the Nephilim thing, if you talk to any other Christian, they don't acknowledge it at all. Like there's very, very few. Because I've had the conversations with some just to kind of touch on it, like, what do you think about that? And they just wholeheartedly dismiss it. But the idea in the beginning, it fills a lot of gaps in the stories in the Bible that actually make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And not just that, but like the whole community, the dangerous retards, there was just something special there. I don't know if anybody can even copy that, but there was something really special about how that all came together. What was that? TLC was something that was something special too, and I totally get why you'd want to not basically do that a lot. Because that's just
Well,
not the great.
for the audience, just so if there are people out there that are unfamiliar with what TLC was, it was my solo show, and it was based off of just interacting with, like you said, the dangerous retards, but it was also the audience listening would submit content to me, and I never watched it. I never screened it ahead of time. And oh, hey, Nancy. And so I would watch it live on the show, for the first time. And eventually it started to take a theme, and it kind of was always the theme, but it was just, what would be the category? Like shocking, horrifying. There's that idea of like the meme Faith in Humanity Restored. This was the opposite of that. This was shit that would corrode your faith in humanity. And for a while, it was fun. Okay, I'm going to admit, like, the whole time it was fun. But I really had to ask myself, like, is this something that I should be looking at constantly? Because what was happening was, let's say, for example, the content typically would involve certain people groups, and I would find myself where I'm a person that believes in the individual and not necessarily the group, and I think that there are patterns and there are stereotypes that you should look at, and they will inform you on how to navigate this world that we live in. But that being said, there's much more value in understanding the individual, and I would find myself almost pushing the idea of the individual aside and looking at the people group and actually starting to resent and dislike and even like borderline hate people. And I was like, it's the Bible says to not harden your heart. And I found myself in a place where like my heart was getting hardened. And so I had to kind of move away from it because it was too much, man.
I mean, as much as I missed the time, because really was a good time, and for anybody that doesn't know, I'm not going to get into details because there's a reason why it's not done anymore. But it was absolutely hilarious. But its time has passed. You know what I mean? Like its time has passed because you're right, and 100%. I mean, I feel exactly what you're saying about. I mean, I have to go to work and I see the same typical people that we'd see the videos over, and I'm seeing them doing things, and I'm like, I can't see you as like just a normal everyday person because I see you as this person that I see on video 1,000 times over doing the most reckless stuff in the world. The end loop was one of the classics though. Like that was one of the best because I noticed it so much after that that it was like this is a real phenomenon. Like this is a real thing that I don't think anybody's ever pointed out before. So,
well, dude, so the internet has started to notice that now, and I've seen like these tweets that go viral where they go, "What is it called when certain groups of people will get into an altercation and then repeat the same word over and over and over again?" And I'm like resisting my keyboard. Like,
yeah,
I know what that's called, and I want to tell you. You know what's really funny though? Before the show started, somebody pulled me aside and they said, "Hey, look at this video," and you know, it's two young kids, these two young black kids, and they're talking to each other in like a Skype or whatever, like a video call. And the one kid's much younger, what I assume is his brother or maybe his cousin or something. I hope it's not his kid because the other kid was pretty young. Is slapping him in the back of the head. This little toddler slapping him in the back of the head. All of a sudden, what happens is it's as if I'm facing you, and I aim my gun over my shoulder, and you just see the green dot right between this little kid's eyes. I mean, this kid is 6 or something, and he's got a dot right between his eyes, and they freeze frame it, and the dot's like, you know, the kid's eyes are all illuminated, and he looks all shocked. This kid's looking directly down the barrel of a pistol, and I said to this person, I go, "Oh yeah, well, that's I've seen a lot of that. And we had this little conversation, and so, you know, Stacks, only 10 minutes before this show got started, I was saying, well, I used to do a show called Timeline Cleanse, and that show was all about looking at shit like this, and so, you know, it causes fatigue, and I just don't need it. Like I know enough, you know what I mean? I understand enough. I've seen enough. I've looked into the abyss enough. I have no, how would you put this? Like, I'm not caught up. I understand the reality of the situation very intimately, but I don't want to look anymore.
Yeah. I think it's bad in general. I mean, as fun and entertaining at certain times as it can be to kind of see it, absorbing too much of that is going to just degrade your soul, in my opinion, anyway. Like, because it's going to reflect now in every person that even remotely resembles the person that you're watching. Yeah. So I 100% get that. It is it's tough because it was a good time, but you know, I just think the time has passed, you know. And it's funny because Drew just went through that a few weeks ago with a laser on him, just out of the blue for no reason. We were talking shortly before the show about it. He's in New York, same thing. Some kid driving by in a car just decides to put a laser from a pistol on him. I mean, it's not like it's a thing like that. This shit happens, and it's just not a good thing to be absorbing all of the time.
Yeah.
The worst thing about it is it's not even I mean, to some people, I'm sure it would be, but to the typical New Yorker like me, it's not even like a shocking thing. Like, oh, I remember that one time. It's like, yeah, that wasn't the first time. Hopefully it'd be the last, but it's not even like that. Like it was like, wow, you dick. Like I get as they pulled away and he was snickering in the car. It was just like this, like, fuck you. Like it was almost like it was not typical, but like not out of this world. And that's very sad as well. And it was a green beam, and it was kind of crazy because I was minding my business. I was sweeping up, and I just saw it like kind of just past my eyesight, and I was like, what the f is that? And I look, and he's got the window down, and it was dark out, and I just saw a hood, and I saw the muzzle, and I'm like, and he started pulling away, and it was like, it took me a moment to process it, and then I realized what was happening, and I was like, I was so mad, but I was like, this is just another indicator that I need to just get the hell out of here.
That's all it is. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Every time I look at a video at the fall of any of these cities, New York City is no exception. I don't know, man. The writing's been on the wall. You got to get the hell out of there a long time ago. And I don't think it's ever too late. But I look at, you know, certain things will happen. I was listening to this woman. I forgot what it was on, but she's talking about this dude. She's walking through the streets of New York City, and he just like follows her, and she says she's got all these signs. She's trying to show that she's in distress, and this dude is following her, and like nobody gives a shit. She passes by countless strangers, men included, and you know, she's making eye contact. In other words, she has successfully expressed to individuals like, yo, I'm being, and like nobody can bother at all. And she's saying this, but all I can hear in my head is every time I've ever heard a chick say, like, I love the city. I love this city. I love like the city life. I love the nightlife. And it's like, dude, even as a young man, like really young, you wouldn't have caught me at these places. I had a couple of bad experiences when I was maybe 15 or 16, you know, in New Jersey, even in New Jersey in the boardwalk at night. And where it's just like middle of summer and there's just crowds pouring out of all the bars on the boardwalk. You know, I ran into some issues down there. People, adult men hitting on my girlfriend that I was with. She's 16 years old, or maybe we were 15. We could have been 15 years old. And I got a good, you know, I don't need a lot of patterns in order to start to, you know, recognize them. In other words, I don't need too much data before I recognize patterns when they emerge pretty soon after they do. And even back then, I was just like, this isn't for me, man. This isn't for me. I don't need to be 15 years old on the boardwalk fighting some drunken 30-something-year-old dude because he's hitting on my 15-year-old girlfriend. It's just like when there are large amounts of people, I check out. I'm done. I don't do it.
Yeah.
I'm with you 100%. That's why I left the city. But talking about what we're talking about, it slightly brings up something that I wanted to try to run by you, because I think your barometer on this is probably important. Now, you know, we talked a little bit about how, you know, you see the chaos and the bullshit and people acting badly, but I think there's a flip side to that coin, because I see a lot more people trying to find God now than I ever have, and it feels like something is happening that I haven't been able to quite put my finger on. Would you agree with that? Like, do you see that more? Like people that listen, you know, I'm a city kid, Drew's a city kid, you're a city kid, Top was a city kid. I don't think anybody in our past could have looked at us and said that we're going to be trying to talk about God in any way, shape, or form. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Other than, you know, whatever the case may be. But do you feel that at all? Is that something you can see too? More people trying to find Christ?
So, yes. And I think that these sort of powers that be, if you want to call them like the Jews or the Satanists or whatever, you know, ultimately it's all a spiritual battle. We struggle against powers and principalities, not flesh and blood. But I think whatever that is senses that as well. And so what it's done is it's deployed something, you know, that I've kind of been describing as like Christian nationalism. And I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, I think the world has gone to such a weird place that even like, let's say, being an atheist or calling somebody a conspiracy theorist, those things have really fallen by the wayside because the world has shown itself to be so much more bizarre than maybe you were allowed to think comfortably in like the 90s or early 2000s. I mean, the early 2000s, we're getting into the war in Iraq and everything, and that is a crazy time, but still there hasn't been enough revealed to us in that time that people are willing to stop ridiculing those who point out conspiracies or drop the idea of atheism and say, well, clearly just in the state of the world, it really feels as though there's a spiritual component to it. That has shifted. And maybe it was like post 2020 when the whole world had to stop and like pay attention for a bit, that people began to realize like the song and dance that you see in politics or your favorite sports team or just the monotonous everyday bullshit that captures your attention is it's a distraction and it's one-dimensional, and behind it there is this greater depth to the reality we live in. So yeah, I think a lot of people are coming to the realization that God is real, and I think I agree with you. I don't I don't know that a lot of people would have saw me talking about God, especially from the Christian angle, because previously it was more acceptable to maybe talk about like new age concepts or, spirituality in the wider sense, God in a not so focused sense, right? Like God, like the universe or some shit like that. I don't know that a lot of people would have saw me go into this direction, but I think a lot of people are experiencing. I've heard somebody put it this way. I've heard several people put it this way, but I fail to remember any of them at the moment. So I'm gonna go ahead and steal their shit and paraphrase it. But it's like when you, this is not my own idea, but I do think it's accurate. When you starve somebody, let's say you lock them in a room and you starve them for however long. Eventually, when you do introduce food to people, they're not going to give a shit what it is. They're going to go to town on Pop-Tarts or, if it's a good fried camel dick, they're going to eat it. You get what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't matter the quality of food. Whereas if it's in abundance, you can kind of pick and choose and have some organic stuff. I think we've been starved spiritually, living in a materialistic paradigm for so long that we didn't realize it because it's so intangible, the spirit, but we were starved of the spirit. And then once it was allowed to be reintroduced, some people went new age, some people went this and that, but all of that hunger for spiritual satisfaction ultimately does lead a lot of people towards God in a huge way, the real God, not like some amorphous God. So I think what the adversary, what the enemy has cleverly done is taken advantage of this. We've been subjected to all this slop that we're talking about. These cities falling apart and, leftist ideology and Marxism and LGBT movements and all this crap. I find that what might be a little bit dangerous, and I do think is happening right now, is some people are glomming onto Christianity not for a love of God and not for a love of the truth and not for trying to strengthen their relationship or any of these things, but as instead a fuck you to this previous system that is left-leaning, that is, gender ideology or race politics or any of these things. And I don't know where that leads us, but I also don't know that that's the right reason to get in with God.
Yeah.
I completely understand what you're saying. I hadn't quite looked at it like that it was like a big fuck you, but that's a good point. Because I think that when most people actually recognize the darkness, like when they can see it, like, it wasn't just something that was spoken about or a satanic panic or, whatever from in the past. But when you actually see it, like some of the things that were pointed out and some of the things we've seen of the LGBT thing, realizing that the governments, most of the governments of the world are being run by satanic pedophiles. Like these things are at the forefront now. Like people are realizing that it's a thing. And I think that that's why, at least it was moving that way where it was like, well, if this is real, then God's got to be real, right? So like if you see a demon or you see a ghost or you see something unexplained that you had no bearing on it before, but now it's in your face. It kind of shows you, well, there's two sides to that coin. And that's what I was kind of thinking. They're seeing how dark things actually are behind the curtain that we didn't previously see, and so they're not now kind of picking up that torch and going, well, if this is it, if this is one side, then the other side has to be there. I hadn't thought about that it was sort of a fuck you, but at that point, I think everybody's also on their own path.
Yeah.
Because if that actually gets you on the path, like if you're choosing the path, I'm good with that part too, just as long as you don't stay there and we have to deal with like, Nazi America, Germany styled stuff. You know what I mean? Like I that's where I could see the flip side of that other thing going to too, where now it's a nationalist thing, like you said, Christian, whatever nationalist version it could be, because that's not the right path either.
I agree with you though. God uses all things, right, to his advantage. And so there are going to be people undoubtedly, it's like when people say like the 501c3 system is dead or any church system is dead or, you name whatever corruption exists within the church, whether it's pedophilia or otherwise. And there's all these things that you can point to say, look, that system is dead. It's like, yeah, but there are still real believers in that system, and God will continue to use that system no matter how corrupted it is. in order to draw people closer to him. And so the same thing should be said about this Christian nationalism thing, where it's like, yeah, if you, let's say you started by being like Christianity is based because, you know, there's no gay LGBTQ shit in there, whatever, or you just hate the idea of leftism, or you hate the idea of, you know, morbidly obese chicks with blue hair who don't have kids of their own but want to spread ideology to yours. You hate that so much, you hate the world so much that it pushes you towards a system instead of God. Well, I think still, whatever your first steps in that direction are, God can use that to, as long as you know, you're really seeking him in your heart. I don't think there's anything that God can't use. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of real people that come out of that.
I tend to agree. Here's the thing. I think there's a realization that I kind of came to. People often talk about parallel systems, parallel economies, parallel whatever to what is, you know, what is already here. And what I've come to realize is that this, I don't have any other word for it, but the beast system, you know, the things that we operate in right now is the parallel system to God's creation. And if people as a whole can start recognizing that what we accept as reality is actually the parallel system that was built by these dark things, dark people, whatever it is, and build something better from that without having to get violent about it. Because the real thing is if you just say no to what their offers are. You want a mortgage, you know, like do you want to be in debt, credit cards, luxuries, things like that. Food from the store. That's all their system. The money is their system. That's their stuff. Like when you participate in it, you embolden them. I said this at one point on another show, but like it relates to the same thing where I work for the power company, and this is just a way to kind of see what I mean. But if you have to turn off their power for some kind of maintenance, they will run outside and say, "Why'd you turn off my power?" That's not your power, right? This is the electric company's power that you're paying for a system to have some of. And it's the same thing when it comes to the financial system, the economy, the food in the store. The food's poison. What are they doing? They're poisoning us. Don't eat it. Yeah. You know, this is that parallel thing that I don't think if we could possibly, I know this is a big ask, but if we could possibly start looking at it like not participating in that paralleled economy that is not good for us, or that paralleled system or beast system, whatever phrasing you want to use, and try to build something else. We can slowly remove ourselves from being under their boot, because that's essentially what it is. Where we're under the boot of people that we're now realizing are the bad guys. Yeah. As a whole.
This is something that Owen Benjamin nails. I'm not going to say it on your show because I don't want to get you tanked, but he says K the J in your own heart.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
And so it's this idea of like, if you really get upset because the Jews, let's say they own the pornography companies and they own the banks, so they issue the predatory loans, and, you know, they're poisoning the food and all this other stuff. It's like, well, you have agency, don't you, right? So you don't have to engage with the pornography. You don't have to take the predatory loans. You don't have to eat, you know, the goy slop or any of these things. And it's one of the things that I think Jordan Peterson had right, you know, really early before he wore two suits or a two-colored suit and lost his fucking mind. But, you know, he was saying this idea of like cleaning your own room. It's like before you can deal with all of the mess in the world, you have to deal with the mess in your own room. And then maybe after your own room, you can deal with the mess in your own house. And then after your house, maybe, you know, on your lawn and your back lawn. And then eventually you can worry about your block, so on and so forth. And you work your way out from there. And if everybody did that, then yeah, I mean, it would be making the world a better place if you dealt with your own sin rather than all of the issues in the world. And to be honest, that's a lot of why I was a conspiracy theorist very early on in my life, is because I was homeless, and even though the conspiracies were true, whatever amount of them were true, whatever amount of them were deception, you know, that's a different discussion. But I would much rather outsource my anguish in trying to manage the problems of the world. Or what about the elites? What about the FEMA camps? What about the blood drinking? What about the reptilians and all this shit? Rather than being like, what about a job, dummy? Like, what about not being homeless? And, you know, now I'm in a place where I get to be effective and I get to hopefully do a show that draws people towards God. But there was a time where focusing on these things was completely probably the wrong thing in some ways. I think it prepared me. I think it's kind of a refining fire that God puts people through hard times in order to build them into people that are worth using, tools that are worth using. But there's a lot of argument to be made that like focusing on cleaning my own room or dealing with my own sin or K and the J in my own heart at that time would have been a smarter investment. But we're sitting in this place right now where I'm kind of looking at, like, let's say the Epstein files, for example, or any of these things, even UFO disclosure, which is something that I've been talking about a lot, but it's because I think it's a really large scale deception that I don't want people to fall for, and if I feel passionately about it, then I should speak against it. That being said, well, what is UFO disclosure? They're going to, let's just say in the most rudimentary form, reveal to us that there are like godlike beings, you know? And what are the Epstein files? Well, where they're revealing to us that they are taking slaves, they are selling and doing horrifying things and murdering children. They are making sacrifices to Old Testament deities. And what I'm really realizing more and more is that all that's happening is a curtain has been cast over the world. And, you know, I couldn't tell you when it happened. The world has always been in that state under the curtain. And recently, the curtain's getting pulled back, and we're seeing the world for what it is. But this is just the world. You know, it's always been this way. And I think probably the biggest disservice was ever hiding it from us in the first place, because it allowed us to believe something that wasn't true. And if you look at it through that lens, you know, we're told over and over and over in the Bible to not be of the world, to be in it but not be of it. What is it that we're pilgrims in a strange land, I think is how it's put. And so the question that I've been asking lately is, well, if all this stuff is meant to evoke these feelings of anger and resentment, which I don't think that comes from God, right? God gives us a spirit of peace and of sound mind. But all these things are horrifying. And so they do evoke these feelings of anger and, you know, sadness and all these things, and confusion, which is another thing. God's not the author of confusion. So these things I don't think are what we should be focusing on. But what do they ultimately lead to? It's like, well, we got to do something, dude. And like, you're right, Stacks. It's like, well, do something. Yeah. You know, plant some food, raise a family. You know, this is something that Owen also says, Owen Benjamin. Create these systems. But like, I don't think biblically speaking, we're ever called to, I don't know, save the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's never our job. We're not supposed to do that. So I think that might be the point of it all, to hide it from us in the first place, and then to reveal it to us, and to reveal it to us in such a jarring manner with back-to-back crazy shit, wars, and you know, the revelations that our leaders are drinking babies, and you know, all of a sudden this potential alien disclosure on the horizon and all this shit. It's supposed to make you feel like something has to change so that maybe you consent when someone comes along and says, I'll change it for you.
I think it's definitely in that realm. First, let me say Owen Benjamin is an absolute crusher.
Yes.
He really is. He's a legend, and he's actually committed to come on this show, which I have no idea why he would say yes to that. I have no idea why you would say yes to this, but it's still going to be fantastic once we get him on, because I've been watching Owen for a while. I often say that these, to me, the way that it looks, the world, the way it operates, is that it's basically tests and offers. So, like, you're going to get offers to do things that are going to make what you want to be an end goal easier. Most of those offers are going to have some kind of catch to them. And that the tests are hand in hand with it, where you understand what's happening and you're going to do it anyway, even though, you know, it's emboldening either the beast system, or, you know, you're playing into the role of something that you know you shouldn't have. And I think day by day, at least the way that I look at this, I realize that some people may not see it this way and probably may not want to see it this way, but day after day, decision after decision, when you're choosing the right decisions, when you're looking at it like a test and not like you're trying to get in an end goal for materialism, right? So like, I need more stuff. I want more of this. How do I get more stuff? How do I get more money? How do I do this? And your tests come in while you're trying to do that, and you will sacrifice your, how do I put this? You'll sacrifice your, I don't want to say soul, but you will sacrifice your integrity.
Hmm.
And the more you sacrifice that integrity, the more it reflects on how much of your soul you'll actually sacrifice to get this materialistic thing. And I think that for me anyway, that's been like the number one driver. I don't want to fall into that trap where I feel like I need stuff. What
Hmm.
stuff can I have? Because the you don't it's a it's a chase that doesn't have an end
It's a
because
bottomless.
you never get your fill.
It's a bottomless pit, is what I was thinking as you were saying that.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah. Uh, and so I don't know. I mean, just in my mind, the way that I see things is that if you treat every decision as a test and the test reflective to how, let's just say, God or Jesus would want you to choose. And if you're looking at these simple decisions, there's a homeless guy on the corner. I do this often. Homeless guy on the corner with a sign. You know damn well he's going to take that money and go buy alcohol
Mm.
or drugs or whatever most of the time. But that's not for you. Do you want to help or not help? Right? Because you just don't. Today could be the day when he makes the decision to not spend it on that. And that's like just one of the small decisions because you could easily just turn your back and say, no, I know you're going to buy alcohol. I know you're going to buy drugs.
Mm.
Um, I think sometimes just little stuff. I say this to my uncle all the time. He finds it shocking because coming from the old me, he doesn't believe I say this stuff. But I'm like, just little shit like hold a door for somebody.
Yeah.
Hold a door for somebody going into a store or a house or whatever. The little things like that tend to add up. And you can make somebody's day with the littlest gesture, but you can also choose to not do that. And I think that just the daily basis of the tests and doing the best that you can do, decision after decision, there's a saying in Narcotics Anonymous, it's do the next right thing. And I think that if you can apply that, whether you're an addict or not, if you can apply that, it tends to build to this different perspective.
Mm.
Because if you go the other way, it builds to another perspective. Is any of this making sense, or am I just running?
No,
Yeah,
I.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, for sure. What when I see people in need, I used to give money because I had that same mentality. And I can't turn my back. If I see somebody with a sign or somebody who really looks messed up, I have that inclination to be like, yeah, you're buying drugs, you're buying alcohol, let me dismiss it. But something in me says this could be a legitimate need. Let me take you to the store. I'm going to the store. You want food? Come on, I'll buy you a sandwich. I'll buy you some groceries. I was in a supermarket the other day. This is like touching on what you're saying and plus going off a little bit. I'm online at the supermarket and they're having a problem scanning the price on an item of mine. They got to call a manager over. There's people online. It's 5 o'clock. Everybody's trying to get home. The line of people, everybody's annoyed. Now I'm feeling like, I don't want to be that guy keeping the line up. So as they're working it out, I look to the guy behind me and, the people behind me, and I'm like, listen, I'm sorry. Like, I'm looking like, I'm sorry this happened. And, we all got stuck here this extra couple of minutes. And a couple of people just gave me a head nod. And the guy directly behind me kind of looked at me and like rolled his eyes and gave me a look like he didn't give a shit that I even acknowledged him like that. And there was a moment
Mm.
where the old me would have been like, all right, you know what? I'm not sorry. Now you're going to wait and everybody's going to fucking wait now because you don't appreciate me being conscious that I feel bad that I caused this inadvertently. And I stopped myself because I said, that's not the kind of person I want to be. And again, it's maybe just a small test on how you react to small things like that. So myself trying to be conscious of all my micro reactions, I guess,
Mm.
to situations like seeing people in need or getting a reaction from somebody that I hold the door for and they don't acknowledge it. They walk past me like I work here and I'm a doorman. I'm the concierge here to open the door for them, trying to change my perspective and saying, that's them. They're living their life. I'm only control of how I react and my reactions and my behavior. And I did what I would want somebody to do for me. And then I just move past it and I try to exit it from my mind and go on to the next thing, which I used to years ago get very hung up where I would say, oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Go hell for me. Just wave, and I'll come running over for you, like to kind of like shove it in their face. And I really trying to change my perspective, which is kind of adding up to kind of what you were saying.
Yeah, dude, I
Here's
think that
go ahead, Dave.
New York is like Twitter. So sometimes I go back and forth, and I think that many people, like let's say New York, for example, that many people, you walk through the streets and you can't go more than a block without running into at least one homeless person who's going to ask you for something. And, you know, if you stop and you acknowledge every single one of them, you're simply never going to get to where you're going. And you'll also be broke by the time you travel from point A to point B. And so, but what I think you just highlighted there is if you switch up your mindset, it becomes this really fantastic training ground. It could go either way, for letting these, because I look at these things now, anger and resentment and all this shit, as a spirit. I think there are things that want you to get caught up in them. It's the same thing as like lust or something like this. Like it's almost like this thing is whispering to you and it's nudging you and it wants you to get caught up in it, because the fruits that indulging in that spirit, you know, those fruits that it bears are rotten. They're terrible, right? And so there is something else that you could be doing instead, even though this voice is constantly, you know, enticing you to do what you're saying, Drew, which is to get sarcastic or to get angry with them. I find the same thing is testing me on Twitter. I went through this place maybe last year where I was in Twitter warfare. I was in like the New York City of shit talking, where it was just thousands of accounts every day interacting with me. I would have a post that goes viral and it would piss all these people off. And instead of just having some humility, I would fight everybody. And look, a lot of it was funny. And I do think that it was kind of one of those things, another one of those refining fires that God uses, where like I'm going back and forth with people and I'm trying to mitigate the stress level that it's causing. And I'm even kind of getting good at it. Like I'm, you know, winning these exchanges, whatever that looks like, winning, you know, and I'm even gaining like some Twitter clout for doing it so successfully, and I'm working out the humor of it all, like it's a shout out to Dayquil, like it's a bit, you know, like almost like it's comedy, like it's stand-up comedy, but still I had to eventually ask myself this question about like, well, what fruits are coming of this? And it's hard because I wasn't a Christian my whole life at all. In fact, I'm very new to this, and there's still so much that I'm learning. I'm not an authority on this at all. But I do see this as, you know, at the very least, you have to ask yourself, well, if I'm claiming that I'm in alignment with Christ and that my show is built on a foundation that I believe is Jesus Christ, then like, how does this fit into that picture? And I struggle with it because I think, you know, a lot of what I was doing was telling the truth. And maybe I was saying it aggressively, but the truth is an important thing to align yourself with and an important thing to say. But there's a slippery slope. Eventually you go beyond the point of truth telling and now you're just in shit slinging. And I don't know, it's like sometimes you can sling shit and then you can come back to the truth and you can kind of play this dance and then eventually and I think the one thing that I did that I never crossed the line too much was like I never thought too much of myself. And I think that if you do think too much of yourself, that's when this really goes to a terrible place. Because I could get into arguments with somebody, we can be going back and forth for like a day or two. And eventually, I since I don't think so much of myself, I don't feel the need to defend myself that much. So eventually, we can come to a place where you might say something to me, and if it's remotely funny, I'll like retweet it. And I'll go like, LOL. You know what I mean? And it could be like a day, like 24 hours of just what you perceive as a Twitter battle. But what I found is that I figured out how to not get emotionally involved. And long story short, from some of those exchanges actually came people that I like. You know what I mean? And the way that I managed to have that happen, where we had a good rapport in the end, was I don't know, I guess it's humility. It's hard to say that if you look at my Twitter or the things that I do, that I have any humility. I like to think I do. I believe that humility is a really important characteristic to have. And it's a hard one to display, especially when, you know, you think you're doing something like I do a show and it's doing pretty well, and that thing is constantly tempting me to defend myself when somebody comes at me. Do you know who I am? I do a show that's watched by some people, and and we have good cameras, and that I think that thing is the most dangerous. Like I got to shut that down and instead replace that with humility. But yeah, I think Twitter or New York, it could actually be a good training ground, a good refining fire to kind of burn that shit off of you.
Yeah, I like what you said. Real quick, Stack. You mentioned something about like there's this maybe invisible force that wants to tempt you to react or behave a certain way, and up until only maybe a year ago is when I really, and me and Stacks have talked about this because I've spoken to him, in a personal conversation about how it's almost like, and going back to the supermarket thing it's so petty, but I'm just using it as an example. In that moment when I felt like reacting, I almost felt like not a hot flash, but I felt like something that I couldn't see or couldn't explain provoking me to go back to old bad habits and be like a sarcastic, like, all right, now I'm not going to be a nice guy. Now we're all going to wait here. Meanwhile, it's like, wait a minute, stop. No, I'm not going to succumb to this force of nature. Like it's a real thing.
Yeah,
and I never looked at it like that until me and Stacks really got into it, and I shift my perspective, and it is real. I'm becoming very convinced.
Dude, I'm not going to do the whole spiel here because I have a feeling Stacks himself has probably heard it too many times, but we have talked to this clinical psychologist, and
I was just going to say that. I was just going to go ahead, man. Go ahead.
So Dr. Jerry Marzinski, I'll give the 1,000-foot overview, but he worked for a really long time with schizophrenics, and in the end, he was like, this is not hallucinations. This is not a chemical imbalance in the brain. This is something external to the victim. And he even goes as far, he says that the best way he's seen it described is demons. But he also says that we are all, everybody's got a drink, but that we all have schizophrenia. And the way he describes it is there are intrusive thoughts. And I would say, Drew, that what we're highlighting here could be categorized as an intrusive thought. And they're inherently negative, you know what I mean? And eventually they go from a place of antagonistic, but they're also telling you, like, you're not worth shit, you're this, and nobody loves you, and yada, yada. And that for schizophrenics, it's just much louder. And it eventually crosses the line to a place where it's what you would describe as audible. And then it goes even further in some cases, and it becomes visual as well. But we all have it. And he said that, I think he said, it depends on how much you believe this thing. Like how much you believe it, how much you believe what it's saying, and that it is you that is saying it. And he says that up to 80% of our thoughts, in his opinion, are not our own thoughts, that there's something else, like they're passing by us and they cross through our like field of awareness. And so, which is very much how I would describe a lot of like the thoughts that come to me, even in comedy where like I'm making fun of people or whatever, like a banger just comes to me and I'm like that right there, but it's almost like I'm observing it. Like it came to me and I saw it instead of like, did a step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 equals funny kind of a deal. It's like these things just pop up in your mind. So yeah, dude, I think that they are like real
entities.
Entities, yeah, they're sentient. They are their own individual thing, and they need you to believe that they are you, but they're not.
Yeah, it's so strong, man. It's really so strong, and that can kind of relate because you know how they say like a lot of these Hollywood movies have like hidden subliminal messages, and you see like an exorcist movie or some type of like possession movie, and it's an exaggeration.
Yeah.
But it kind of like maybe reflects some sort of like invisible entities that whisper in our ear and, give us a bad thought or a good thought and how we react to it, how susceptible we allow ourselves to be to it is where our challenge comes with God and, learning from mistakes that we have made when we did show for it and give into it.
Yeah.
And then hopefully learning from it and being able to better combat it moving forward and be more resilient and resistant to it.
Well, in the Bible, what does it say? I don't know if any of you guys know, but it's like taking every thought captive in the name of Jesus Christ is something that is, let me see real quick. I'm sorry, go ahead, Stax. I want to look this up.
Okay, yeah. So there was a couple of things there that it's funny how, parallel the conversation I kind of plotted out is with what it just organically went to. But um, the Sean Ryan show, along with Jerry Marzinski, right? He just had an exorcist on um, from I want to say it's the Catholic Church, and I only got to watch about the first 15 minutes or so. I plan on watching it later. It's like 4 hours long. But the part that I did catch was him talking about these entities, demons. Everyone has different names for them. He's calling them demons. Um, how they all have their own wheelhouse. Like some of them are fear, some of them are
Sure.
anxiety, and that they will come and provoke you with that.
Yeah.
Like you said. So like whatever demon's wheelhouse the anxiety's in, or the you're the worthless thing, and if you allow it to, if you listen to it, if you put any stock in what it's saying, it has you. It preys on you. It continues to come back for more. Because my belief is that they're feeding off of that. Like
Yes.
if they it's like a bait and a hook. You know what I mean? Here's a little fear, and if you bite on that, they start reeling you in. Um, it's just this is what I was kind of getting to is whenever the tests are training. That is the training. You go through these little minuscule tests every day. Um, that's the training where you're building up your shield against some of this. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's going to get it right every time. But for me, it's the ability to go, no, I'm not doing that. Nope, no, not doing that,
Yep.
and being able to shield against it because these little tests are your training for some of the bigger tests that I think are coming. The idea that the alien invasion isn't going to be something demonic, I think, is just I don't see how it couldn't be. We start dealing with these. We know what these people dabble in these forces of darkness, and now they want to tell us that there's aliens. And there's the famous quote from Warner von Braun's. I think it was his secretary or something that said, "The last deception will be alien invasion."
Hmm.
You heard that before, correct?
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, the series of small training tests that we kind of go through on a daily basis, which normally no one would give any credit to, it's just like training in the gym. I'm sure you can relate to this, David. Like if you're not strong enough, if you don't know how to land them punches, if you don't know how to defend yourself, when you get into the ring for this big deal, you're gonna lose. So it's just how I see some of this stuff that's coming down the pipe, where it's fear, 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 and now alien invasion. Because that's on the table, dude. Like that's something I can't imagine them not doing. They're using it as a way to get you to not look at the Epstein files now, because it's like the same day Epstein files hit. Oh, by the way, Barack Obama's going to start telling you about how aliens are real.
Yeah.
So
That
it's
whole
like,
thing was really strange too, because anybody who bought that as an organic thing, and then Trump's response to it as an honest response. I mean, like, just look at it on its face, how strange it was. He's like, oh, he shouldn't have said that. That was classified information. He's like, the dude, number one, he didn't say anything. He just said, aliens are real. I've never seen them. They're not in Area 51 unless there's some grand conspiracy to keep it from the president's knowledge. And so he never says anything that is not openly speculated by anybody who's ever had the thought of aliens cross their mind. And yet Trump's response to that is like, oh, he shouldn't have said that. That was classified. Maybe I'll declassify it to. It's like, yeah, this is all just moving the story along. It's such a strange phenomenon, guys, because I've been looking at it for so long, and I definitely don't have everything correct about it. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm wrong about, or there's a lot of stuff that I might be confusing with one thing or another. But even with everything that I do think that I know, I'm watching this march forward, and whatever is going to happen is going to be super convincing. And it's gonna fool a lot of people. I know you guys have probably seen the way that I was having it out with Timothy Alberino, which Alberino, for those that don't know, I don't know if he's an archaeologist exactly. He dresses like one, or at least a fictional one on television, and he's an author, documentarian, things of that nature. And he's been in this conversation for a long time about biblical entities, angelic beings, Elohim, Nephilim, you name it, and how they might be responsible for the megalithic structures of antiquity or of pagan civilizations all around the globe, and in this idea that the Nephilim were giants and they're the ones who carried and set the stones that fit together with razor-like precision, in places like Peru or in Egypt, all these things that still confuse us today and confuse modern-day archaeologists, or at least the ones that are willing to admit that it's confusing. And the only reason that I went after Alberino is because he was saying that if you think that aliens are demons, you're an idiot. And he said it enough times in enough different ways, some that even seemed to be pointing directly at our show, Nephilim Death Squad, that eventually I decided to kind of make a joke about him. And that joke was dressing like Indiana Jones, and I was whipping my mirror, and the caption just said, if you think aliens are demons, you're retarded. But my problem with that whole thing isn't Timothy Alberino, isn't the way that he dresses, any of that stuff. I'm a fan of a lot of the work that he's done, and I'm sure, even though I didn't absorb his content directly when I was younger, a lot of his research informs my worldview currently. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that that was the case. But to dismiss it, this idea that aliens and demons are connected in such a way as to even speculate that they are the same thing is, I don't know how to put it. I mean, I want to say it's retarded, but it's not just retarded. It's nefarious, because the overlap between the phenomenon, which, let's first get out of the way that it's a rather intangible phenomenon, right? It's a hard one. And in fact, if you're in the scientific community, you're likely over the last 20 years to be laughed out of the room if you talked about this as a serious phenomenon, either or, demonic possession or alien encounters. So that right there is we can't talk about this in concrete terms. But if you were to look at, abductee testimony versus the testimony of people who have encountered demonic entities, the overlap is tremendous. And I don't know, we probably won't have time to get into all of it, but a couple of things in particular, for example, the state that an individual is in when they have these encounters. Typically, it's in the night, you wake up, you're paralyzed, you are filled with an unbelievable sense of dread, you detect the presence of shadow humanoids in your room, you feel this electrical buzzing sensation, and when you wake up in the morning, everything is normal as if it never happened. Both of those things are, well, that thing that I described is an aberration. It's totally abnormal in anybody's waking life. When it does happen to you, it's so abnormal that you don't even really have a frame of reference for it. You might share it with a couple of people, but really it just kind of fades out of your memory because, you don't have a way to contextualize it. And even sharing it with people sometimes is a little off-putting for them. They kind of go all right, I don't fucking know what to tell you about that. And, but the fact that phenomenon takes place in both of those experiences is something that is important if we're categorizing patterns to remember, right? You go, wow, that's weird. So that thing that is strange that, you don't have a frame of reference for, that happens to some people, it's not that uncommon, happens in both of those circumstances, demonic encounters. And the other thing is that in both of these situations, calling upon the name of Jesus Christ has a non-zero success ratio. In fact, it's way more than just in the single digits of percentages that this phenomenon will stop when you call upon the name of Jesus Christ. It's up there, dude. I don't know what it is. It's hard to quantify it because, like I said, this is considered pseudoscience. So the categorization and the data chunking is lofty and it's unreliable. But I would say that if somebody said it was over 50% of the time the phenomenon will stop when you call upon Jesus Christ, I would not be surprised at all. And that data point right there is we have to seriously consider that this is the same phenomenon, just interpreted differently by different people, or at least presenting itself differently to different people. And with that being said, just those two examples, which there are more, but just those two examples alone, to get on a platform like Twitter or to get on a show like, let's say, Blurry Creatures or any show and say, if you think aliens are demons, you're an idiot, I kind of begin to, I have to now suspect that you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, for sure. Here's my thought is real quick. First of all, crushing everything you just said. When it comes to people cementing themselves in their particular belief, I think that's where you start to go awry, where you've arrived and you have it all figured out, right? So, like, the one thing that I would say is that, again, this demonologist, which is to back up your point, said these demons often show themselves to people as gray aliens. Like, this is only 15 minutes of watching it, so
this
like,
is
you
from
know,
the Sean Ryan
yeah,
show. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so
And like
he's
I
a
said,
demonologist, this guy?
yeah. So, I mean, I wish I could have watched more. I just didn't have time. But the short time that I did, it's funny because of the parallels that, you know, where I'm kind of lining up with the idea. Yeah, he's kind of right there. And he's a very, very famous demonologist. Like, they call him for all kinds of stuff. And for him to say that, it's kind of like, I kind of think that might be in the right realm. And here's the thing. Here's the catch. There's a story in the Bible about a Roman centurion that went to Christ to ask him to heal his son or a family member or something like that. And the faith of a mustard seed was necessary. This dude truly believed, even though he wasn't a Christian, but he's seen Christ healing people, and he believed. Because he believed, the kid was healed. So calling out to Jesus or calling out to God in the face of a demon, I think it hinges on whether or not you actually believe. Because, you know, you're not, if he's never known you, you've never prayed, you're not searching, and then all of a sudden you're in some shit and you start calling out, you know, there's no faith there. There's no mustard seed there. There's nothing there for that to work on. So, like, I would say that in the cases that did actually work, where it just went away, you know, Christ help me, or start praying, or whatever it is that these people say, and then it goes, they had faith. And the people that it didn't work for didn't. To me, that's sort of, and I'm, you know, again, not 100% on anything, but it just seems to be like when you listen to the scriptures, listen to people, listen to the stories, and, you know, given that this is all third party most of the time and you can't really nail anything down with 1,000%, I think that's where a lot of it hinges at, is that, do you believe?
Yeah.
That's going to be the key as to whether or not you can actually be helped.
So my this isn't revelatory. In fact, I'm sure many of the people in your own chat would attest to this. My understanding of Scripture is novice at best, and I don't pretend otherwise. On Nephilim Death Squad, a lot of what people are watching is my learning. I'm learning in real time. I have this conspiracy background, and I'm not even the best at that. But I think the reason that the show does well is because I'm honest and earnest in my pursuits. So I'm still coming to terms with so much of the Bible. But I know that there are instances in the Bible that, you know, trying to cast out a demon in the name of Jesus doesn't always work. I know that the 7 sons of Sceva try this, and they reference the Jesus that Paul references. And this demon responds, and it says, Jesus I know and Paul I know, but who are you? You I don't know, something to that effect. And so, you know, I think that goes to what you're saying. This actually having faith is you know, really important. But then there is also another instance where Jesus draws delineation and says that a different demon requires prayer and fasting. So this one comes out by prayer and fasting, as opposed to being casted out. And I think what that's kind of highlighting is, and this might go to something like, let's say, generational iniquity, because what I've learned over the course of the show is the legal nature of the spiritual realm and the accesses that we give. It's like when I pray, I don't ask God to like remove a demon from me or something like that. The way that I phrase it is like, if I have come into agreement with a spirit of anger, if I've come into agreement with a spirit of resentment or of lust or of any of these things, I repent because that's a two-way street. I did a thing that gave a thing access to me. And I ask God to then remove that and to, break this contract or break that agreement. Because I think once you enter into this contract, and we get there a number of different ways, there's now a debt that's owed. And that debt has already been paid through the blood of Christ. But I think you need to identify the thing that you've done, repent for the thing that you've done, and then pray the blood of Christ over this thing to sort of break these contracts. But with generational iniquity, it just kind of highlights the legality of the spiritual realm, where an entity, because of the sins of your ancestors, your grandparents, whatever, can then have access to a bloodline. And I believe in the Bible it says that this is up to like 4 to 7 generations or something like that. So, it's like, did you sin because you willingly participated in looking at pornography and therefore committed adultery in your heart and entered into agreement with a spirit of a spirit of lust, and are you looking to break that? Or is there something that has access to your bloodline? So my point is to just say there seems to be a lot of complexities within the spiritual realm. Our salvation is super simple. Our salvation is we're saved through grace. We're grafted onto the vine. We needed only to accept this thing that is given freely, right? And so that's the simple part. But in the spiritual realm, it seems like a web of legality and consent and accesses that are granted through a bunch of different dumb shit that we do, throughout the day. And I think that the world is set up in such a way as to constantly be laying traps for us in everything. Whether it's like being in a city and having all of this input and every opportunity under the sun to lash out and come into agreement with some different spirit, the spirit of anger or rage or, yada, yada, because at any given time there are swaths of other people who have these spirits whispering in their ear, telling them to engage with you in this way so that you can consent to this interaction, so that you can come into agreement with this spirit too. People will say, not every alien abduction stops in the name of Jesus Christ. People will also say, I had a demonic encounter and that didn't stop in the name of Jesus Christ. And it's like, that doesn't mean that you're wrong about the nature of what you're dealing with. So if I say that the nature of an alien, air quotes alien, because I really do actually hate that word. Alien means foreign, but that's not what we think about when we hear it in our minds. When you say alien, we think of like something on a UFO. It comes from space. Maybe it's a disc or a craft or whatever. Maybe it's interdimensional, but it's got a big head and it's got big eyes, or maybe it's wearing a cowl and it looks like a giant praying mantis or whatever. That's loaded. It's loaded. You're not just saying foreign. You're saying entity, and then you're attributing a bunch of different characteristics to this entity because of, culture, the media, Hollywood, the propaganda machine, NASA, the Nazi pioneered space program. Like, there's all this crap, this apparatus at play that helps inform what this word means in your head. And I think it's all bullshit. I think it's all rebranding. I think that the adversary, has its own tools and has its own modes of presenting itself. Nathaniel Gillis calls it the phenomenon. He says that the phenomenon will present itself as whatever you're most likely to believe at any given moment. I think there's a lot of truth to that. And so, but at its heart, its nature is what's most important. So if you were to say what matters more, a thing's form or its function, well, what is its form? It's an alien. It's a demon. It's a an ancestral spirit. It's a lowercase g God. It's a, you name it, yada, yada, yada. What is its function? It's to lead you away from God, to tempt you into sin, and to corrupt you, at its core. It's in opposition to God, and it's in opposition to humanity. So just because the name of Christ doesn't work, which there might be a bunch of reasons why it doesn't work on your first go around, doesn't mean that you've fundamentally misunderstood this thing's function or its nature.
Yeah. First, just for me to add, if it ever sounded like I was saying that I know for sure something, that's not what the intention was.
Oh, I don't know shit either. Join the club.
Yeah, I just want to make that clear because I just realized it might have sounded like that when I was saying something. This is just sort of some of the conclusions that made the most sense off what I've learned so far. And when it comes to the aliens, even the way they look, I've mentioned this to people, and you can see the more or less, sometimes they go, holy shit, he might be right, or it's totally dismissed. But why do you think you know what an alien looks like? Not you, but anybody, right? Like,
Yeah.
why do you think you know what an alien looks like? Because the TV showed you an image. The screen showed you an image. And so now you're transferring that because you've never actually seen one. No one really has. They're just showing you an image that you're now correlating to what you believe that word looks like. Like,
Mm.
to alien looks like this, demon looks like that, angel looks like this. Um, but so like when we're presented these actual entities, I believe that they're also capable of showing you what you think you want to see in order for it to form a manipulation on you, like whatever that might be. I don't know, shown as like, it's just funny to me that they would say, a demonologist would say a gray alien is what some of these present themselves to be, when like that image was made up on TV.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So
For all
it's
we
just,
know, it could look like you or me or anybody. It could look like, it could be a shapeshifter. It might not have a singular form. We
Mm.
don't know. It's to say it's a blue alien or a green alien or a gray alien. Have you seen one? Do you know for sure? Or are you going off of what Hollywood has predicted since we were kids?
I think that
that's
there's something that people do see, but I think that a lot of it is, there was a time where alien experiences were like, they were describing like small, either like brown creatures or green creatures, and they were wearing silver spacesuits. And then over time, it changes. New entities get added to the pantheon, of alien creatures, and it changes over the years. A lot of things change about the alien phenomenon over the years, um, including its predictions. Oftentimes they'll have a prophetic word for the abductee about some sort of coming calamity, an apocalyptic scenario, whether it was a geostorm or a magnetic polar shift, or we were going to destroy the world with pollution, or a nuclear war. Like, it's changed over and over and over again. They keep changing what they're prophesying to the abductees. They change how they look to the abductees. They also change sort of the messaging. Like, I know at one point it was like, you're special, which kind of is always the case. You're special is always the case, which I think is really clever. I think it hijacks this. We are special. We're called. We have a uniqueness in God, and we have our own unique purpose, and God has a plan for us. We have to choose to do that, but that resonates with us because of that element. I think that God has this specialness planned for us all, and He wants to use us. We all have our own role, and I think that's what gets that question, like, what am I meant to do? What is life for? Like, it's because there is something inside of our hearts that is calling to us, and it's God's plan. But they hijack that and they tell us we're special. They'll call us dumb shit, like star seeds, or they'll call us indigo children. Indigo children was one for a long time.
yeah.
And so they're constantly like, they are presenting a bunch of different shit to us but they also give us like a new age Gnostic gospel to come back and spread. And the way that they convince us to spread that, some of the abductees are convinced to spread this because they're basically told, if you don't spread this giant, aforementioned catastrophe is going to take place and the world is basically going to end. And then I think they can give you dreams of like apocalyptic scenarios. But I think that there is a precedent for physical things that people do see. I just wonder how many of those things are actually like biomechanical creatures that are created. You don't need to create a lot of them. If you're, the government, and I'm using that in air quotes too, right? It's like really black ops or blacklisted shadow organizations within the government, the same intelligence agencies that would be running things like Operation Midnight Climax or MK Ultra or any of these intelligence operations. They were formerly not on the books, so it would be something like that. If you can create 10 biomechanical entities and show somebody those things, because what is pretty consistent throughout the abductee testimonies is that when they are taken, whatever they do recollect, they often remember people, military personnel, medical personnel, scientific personnel, right? But they also remember these entities. I'm like, yeah, dude, all they got to do is show you like one or two creatures, and that's going to fuck up your whole perception of what was happening. I've gotten to this place now where I think that a lot of the abductee experience was actually these programs like MK Ultra, these trauma-based dissociative operations where they're creating all kinds of shit, dude, like a Manchurian Candidate or a school shooter, or somebody that we found out recently the government has a real interest in remote viewers, which has always been the case, but it's like, how are these people trained up? Well, they're probably trained up in these experiences that they barely remember, but they were subjected to MK Ultra programming where they were traumatized and put in a state of disassociation, and in that gained access to a whole bunch of old factory settings, that the average person doesn't exercise on a regular basis. And then later on in adulthood is used as a remote viewer for the CIA or some crazy shit like that. I think a lot of it is probably that. But these entities outside of the biomechanical ones, the ones that are potentially created in some lab, before the alien phenomenon and afterwards, there's been no shortage of like new age thought leaders channeling. They're channeling. That's how they're accessing. Aleister Crowley through the Amalantra workings channels Lamb and channels AWAS, and even has that famous quote that says something to the effect of, "Today they call them angels and demons. Tomorrow they'll call them something else." And then of course Lamb is like the very first image of a alien gray that we've ever had. So it's weird that right now in the cusp of disclosure, they want to create this nuts and bolts thing, Space Brothers from another dimension or another galaxy, and they're using highly advanced technology, and it's all about the 0-point tech, and it's all about the what this could do for changing radically the systems that we have here on Earth. It's the technology. But nobody's saying like, by the way, like a lot of these entities, they bear strong resemblance to all the things that all these new age dudes used to channel. And even Crowley says it. He said that we would previously have communicated with these things through ritual and ceremony and drug use and meditation. I'm adding some extra shit in there. I don't think he said the drug use and meditation. He said ritual, right? So like the workings, the Amalantra workings or whatever. Like he's got to go through this whole elongated process. He says in the future, it's going to be technology. That's how we're going to do it. And I think we're at that point now. CE5, right? You got Stephen Greer. He's telling you and your buddies like, hey, come here. Don't worry that I do gay porn or whatever the hell the deal is with Stephen Greer. I can teach you through binaural beats, which is something that, once again, it comes from these MK Ultra programs, the Monroe Institute, the Gates program. I'm going to hemisync. I'm going to hemisync your brain. I'm going to sync the hemispheres of your brain up, and it's going to allow you to perceive a thing. And you and your homies are going to be able to perceive it too. Just listen to the CE5 app, and you'll be able to summon orbs, UFOs, orbs, or what? Channel. You're channeling. You're channeling these entities into. So it's like it's all still there. It's right in your face. That all of this shit comes from these old entities that people have been channeling, and they've been working rituals to contact. And now all of a sudden we're doing it through technology, and all these dudes who did a bunch of dark butt magic. For Aleister Crowley's just deep in buttholes to try to get this coveted knowledge, back in the day, and now it's here in the very technology that he more or less prophesied would be the case. And there's no shortage, dude, of all these guys. Rudolph Steiner said the same thing. Manly P. Hall said the same thing. Alice Bailey said the same thing. They're all pointing to this time when there would be a big rebranding. I'm not saying you should believe these guys. I'm just saying, isn't that fascinating that all these dudes would say, post 2000, some were even more specific, 2025, 2026. I think Alice Bailey was more specific in that way, would be when these entities would be reintroduced to us and they'd be rebranded. Previously, they were, enlightened teachers, gods, angels. This is how they categorize them in many cases. Rudolf Steiner said demons. And he's a weird guy. I don't know where to put half of his shit, but he still nevertheless pointed to this era as a rebranding of demons into enlightened teachers. And, so it's all right there. It's all accessible, but everybody wants you to just look at the nuts and bolts. But what about the 0-point technology? Like, yeah, sure, I guess that's cool.
I mean, yeah, and thank you because having an epic Raven rant on the shit show is fucking awesome.
I gotta, by
But
the way, shout out to Subliminal Messenger. I am the recipient of the Netty Awards Righteous Rant. So thank you to Subliminal Messenger. I think he's in the chat. I don't know for which one, but I gladly accept the award.
Take any accolade you could get.
so this is I mean I don't want to keep you too long. I'd keep you here for as long as you want to stay.
I'm good I'm good. Don't worry about it, brother.
Okay. Because my feel on this is, especially when you're talking about channeling and all these other things, my feel on it is that we live in the ruins of what was once actually where these things dwelled, if that makes sense, right? Like the reason why God decided to flood the earth with the catastrophe. There's remnants of what you could consider what these people and things and entities did all around us. When you're looking at the ruins of, like how you talked about the temples and the pyramids and all these big ruins, right? So my feel is that this type of thing. I mean, why did they want to know about Gilgamesh's tomb when they went into Iraq, right?
Did you see they asked this bitch that in the deposition?
No, I missed that. Did they?
Dude, yeah. So,
Hillary?
Yeah, they're asking Hillary in this deposition that's based off of the release of the Epstein. I don't know. You call them Epstein files. They're just emails and correspondence, and I don't know. I guess it's files, but and it came up, which I don't even know if that even comes up in the release from the DOJ, the 6.5 or 7 million files that the DOJ released over the last few weeks. I don't know that comes up. I know that's an old, I believe an old correspondence that was found in Anthony Weiner's laptop, that whole saga. And yeah, I don't know. She just says like, no, I wasn't asking about Gilgamesh and the Nephilim. I was being asked about Gilgamesh and the Nephilim. And I don't even know if she goes on much further than that, but it's so surreal to see her even addressing like the words Gilgamesh and Nephilim coming out of her mouth. They're like, what is going on, dude?
That's sort of like what I was getting at is like, it's this, I think the esotericism, the entities, the things that they're trying to channel were probably once flesh before, God decided to wipe the world clean from them. And they're trying to get that back. Like my deep thought is that, and I could be way off with this, but it seems like they're trying to channel what once was in order to try to elevate themselves, because there was the promise that ye will be like gods. And what do they always talk about? Like they want to find a way to not die. They want to find a way to elevate themselves over the rest of humanity. And I think that if they can convince people that that's not a real thing, that it's less competitive. Like, you know what I mean? So that other people aren't on that same path. But I mean, to me, it just seems to become, and this was just a fleeting thought I had at one moment when I was researching things, but as these things pop up, it seems to become more and more relevant in the back of my mind that like this seems to be what they're trying to do. What, the Babylon, the temple, when they were trying to build up to God so that they could kill him. The reason why there's so many languages supposedly is because so God could say, you're not organizing like that again. And what do we see? It's like the things that were supposed to be barriers to that are slowly being knocked down as they try to figure out a way to channel these things, possibly bring them back, or use what they used during that time. And I know this will sound a little weird and whatever, but I also think that when they said that they corrupted the flesh of men and animals and birds, right? Like there's some version of that's in the Bible when it comes to like what the Nephilim were doing. When I say that there's remnants of it, I mean, look around at some of the animals that could have survived the flood that don't look like they belong. What's a duck-billed platypus?
Dude, I was going to say a platypus, bro. I was going to say that. That's so funny.
Yeah. I mean, like it looks like if you took a beaver and a duck and spliced their genes and stuck them together, that you'd get something like this. Or whatever, whatever animals. And even
By the way, it's also poisonous, I believe.
Is it? I don't.
Is poisonous, which is I don't understand the function. Like I don't understand like what's poisonous, dog. Like is it the bill or like the beaver tail or like what part of the? Because it looks really cute, and I'm confused as to what part of it is poisonous. If you've got a snake, I go, oh, the teeth. It's the teeth, right? Like you tell me this thing is poisonous, I'm like, it's the bill. The bill is poisonous. I don't know what part, but yeah. So maybe a chimeric creation. I don't know what the hell.
I mean, I even look at like alligators and crocodiles too. I'm like, where the fuck, because they once talked about dragons.
Yeah.
That's in. To me, that was a thing that probably existed at some point in time. Where else would they have dreamed these up from? They all look the same. But I mean, if you put all that together, I know that's a little far fetched. Trust me, I get it. But I mean, if you put all that together, what it seems to be is that the people now are trying to build back what once was before God washed it clean off the earth. And it seems like that's what the goal is, especially when you start putting all the little bits and pieces together about, like, I mean, the Gilgamesh thing to me is like, wow. Like, I mean, that's just something where it's like, what was Gilgamesh known for? He became a Gibberim.
Correct,
Became
yeah.
a Gibberim, right? Like, so he was once a regular person or some form of a regular person and became a Gibberim. So how did he do that? The people that are trying to live this life on this earth where they're trying to manipulate their way into these things, that would be something I would think that they would want to pursue. I mean, there's a lot of theories on how that transpired. But the point is that I think what we're seeing is if they can get this disclosure, quote unquote, and convince people that these things are real and bring them back in some way, shape, or form, whether that's AI or an AI robot or something like that, or even whatever their projection to be with these UFOs or these aliens or whatever. I think ultimately that's what it's about, bringing back what once was in order to empower themselves. Feel free to call me a loon. But I
No.
mean, how do you feel about that? Has that ever crossed your radar, that thought at all, or is it way too off?
No, I mean, I've always kind of looked at that idea of like as in the days of Noah, which there's a lot of contention on that verse in the Bible, and some people think it means one thing, and some people think it means another. The other side basically is saying like, yeah, people are going to be sinning and fornicating and doing drugs, and the world is going to be covered in sin, which I would say, yeah, absolutely. But I take it a step further, and I think that like I said, I adhere to the Michael Heiser worldview on these matters, and I've also said that my view on Scripture or my knowledge of Scripture is very novice. It's something that I'm still learning. But the thing that I do look towards is all of the precedent for if Michael Heiser's worldview is correct, meaning there's hybridization, the Nephilim are in fact the offspring of fallen angels and human women, and they begat all sorts of monstrous things. Giants were among them, but there were other things. I believe that Heiser, the way that he paints the pantheons even of various pagan mythoses, is that they were real entities. And, some of them fall into the fallen angel category. Some of them fall into the Nephilim category. Some of them are much more like a hybrid chimeric creature. Like if you look at the Egyptian pantheons, you have like a crocodile-headed, man and all these different things. Well, I look to what's happening now. Especially within the alien phenomenon, there is a hybridization program. It's called the Black-Eyed Children, and it's evolved over time. Back in the 80s, they were these kids that were pale and they had weird-shaped heads and they had gigantic eyeballs. And then, throughout the 90s, those features got less and less grotesque, and all the way up until modern day, where people are having encounters with the Black-Eyed Children, which, just for the audience's sake, it is people who are abducted, women who are abducted, who are impregnated, who the pregnancy is confirmed by a doctor, but mysteriously goes away at some point, usually after another abduction experience, and then later on in life, down the line, they would be reintroduced through another abduction experience to these kids. They would feel like they're their kids, but something is wrong. And one of the more famous cases of this is Karen Wilkinson. She's been a guest on this show. She works with L.A. Marzulli. and she had her pregnancy confirmed by a doctor. And then later on, when she went back for routine checkups, the doctor was astonished to find that the pregnancy was gone and that there was, in fact, no signs of her being previously pregnant. And then years later, Karen would be reintroduced to these kids. And I believe that the Greys were even trying to get Karen to interact with these kids. There's something almost like there's something wrong with them. Can you help? So, for example, there was somebody. Oh, there we go. Grey Pilled. Shout out Grey Pilled. Minotaur
What's
came
up,
from the
buddy?
OG Assyrian bullman hundreds of years before, right? So, and I think that, you know, the explanation potentially for like a bullman or even the eagle-headed Sumerian kind of Anunnaki gods would be, let's say, a cherubim, for example. If what we're dealing with is fallen angels, and many types of angels fell, one of those might be a cherubim. A cherubim has the face of a man, the face of an eagle, the face of an oxen, and the face of a lion, I believe. And so right there alone, if you have like the lion-faced men of Moab, if that truly does mean, if you take it at face value, there was actually a pun in there, then, you know, maybe they're an offshoot of this entity, or these bull-headed, you know, minotaur creatures, once again, throughout a bunch of different mythoses, you have this occurrence. Maybe that's also a result of a cherubim or something like that. And so I know somebody in the chat earlier was Xerox, who is, I would consider Xerox a buddy of mine. He deviates. He thinks, yeah, he's a great dude. He thinks it's sons of Seth. And you know, at the end of the day, like I said, I'm very limited on my knowledge of scripture. But when I look to this modern day phenomenon, and I look at like potential chimeric creations by, you know, government entities that, of course, you know, there are regulations and rules. We're not supposed to clone this. We're not supposed to hybridize that. My ass. Of course we're doing that. And I think that those creatures that people run into as cryptids, I think many of them might actually be experimentations. And I think that, like the book of Ecclesiastes says, nothing new is under the sun. So I don't think that we're doing anything groundbreaking here. I think that this is all just, like you said, a recycling of ancient teachings, ancient concepts, and ancient practices. And so if we're doing hybridization today, and if it's present within this, you know, alien abduction phenomenon, and then I'm looking at Heiser's worldview, which really helped me to gravitate towards Christianity as being an apt answer for all of these conspiracies and all these supernatural things, then I would go like, well, I don't know enough about scripture to try to, let's say, debate somebody, for example, verse by verse and say what this means in the ancient Hebrew and that. But I can turn and go, well, all throughout conspiracy theory, especially modern day, there is something that is almost the mirrored image of this Heiser worldview. So through that lens, you know, I keep looking through it and it keeps bearing fruit. And I think it's the same thing, you know, with this alien phenomenon. Besides the hybridization program, you know, you have all these different entities. You have the tall Nords, and you have the insectoids, and you have the small grays and the tall grays and the reptilians. And, you know, we've done episodes with people like Ed Mabry who have talked about the seraphim, and he's given his piece as to why he thinks the seraphim had like a reptilian angle to them, like the Nakash in the garden was a seraphim, and it was the shining one. And this is, you know, he goes into all these different things about how they had the ability to shapeshift. And, you know, and I'm not saying that you have to subscribe to that, but I'm saying that if you extrapolate on these texts, there's even a way to explain the fucking reptilians, the shape-shifting reptilians. So I'm like, I'm not saying my worldview is definitively correct, but I'm just saying that it so far does a great job of framing much of the really phenomenal, out of the realm of normalcy phenomenon that take place today, framing them in a biblical context, which I think is important, because I think, honestly, as we go forward, we're about to be flooded with so much information between Epstein files and AI and alien disclosure that no matter how much I think I know about conspiracies, no matter how much I think I know about, you know, whatever, I'm going to be super wrong, because the information overload is going to be coming like crazy. If you can generate images and videos that seem just as real as, you know, real life, then why can't you generate text? Why can't you generate any of this shit? If you're going to release 6.5 million files from the DOJ having to do with Epstein, how the hell do I know that any of that is real anymore? So we're going to be so flooded soon that being grounded in the gospel and having your eyes on God, having your eyes on Jesus Christ is about the only way that you're going to get through this. Because I don't care who you are, man. I don't care if you're an Alex Jones, you've been doing this forever. I don't care if you're David Icke and you had ancient ascended Atlantean masters, disseminate coveted knowledge to you after you had a stroke or what the fuck ever. I don't care what your source is. If your source isn't the Holy Spirit, if you cannot get off of leaning on your own understanding and instead looking towards God and having faith, I think you're going to be fucked.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. And that's why I always try to see these things through that biblical lens to explain it, because I think that's the only place where you're going to actually find the truth, is if it doesn't coincide with God's word in some way, then they're telling you a lie. Just the way that I see it today. So my explanation of me trying to explain some of what I said, that didn't sound too schizo to you?
No, dude, not at all. Not at all. I mean, I think there's real precedent for that, as in the days of Noah, right? Ecclesiastic, nothing new under the sun. These things are, I don't think we're in an age of like creating new shit. I really don't. I don't think so. I think everything is just a rehashing of things that have already existed. Maybe its form changes a little bit, but that's back to that form versus function thing. It's not the form of a thing, but its function that matters. I think, the mask will be different. I like what Sam Tripoli says, where he calls technology hardwired mysticism, where I think a lot of things that same way that Aleister Crowley says, we used to contact them through ritual and channeling. Eventually we're going to do it through technology. I think that's very much the case. So even if it takes a different look, let's say the Tower of Babel really was just a tall building that was in the right geographical location in maybe a thin spot in the veil, where if you climbed to its heights and you did a ritual, you could potentially game your way into a heavenly realm. That versus CERN, colliding particles together in order to recreate the Big Bang and potentially opening up a wormhole. Okay, form versus function, dude, because the function is still piercing the veil into a different realm, but the form of it is a large hadron collider versus a super tall building, if that was really what the Tower of Babel was. So I think, you're right over the target. We're going to see a lot of the same shit. It's just going to look a little bit different, but the goal is going to be the same.
I mean, I really hope you get Michael Heiser on the show, by the way. I mean, that's going to be a fantastic show, just hearing you guys busted up with him. That would be awesome.
Well, I'd have to summon him from the dead.
Well, I'm sorry, not him. Who was his son or something that you guys were trying to get on?
No. So are you talking about Skiba? Because Skiba also passed away, but we actually just had the pleasure of being on Jeremiah Skiba's, which was previously Rob Skiba's show, Skiba News Network, and I think he even invited us to his live event. I don't know why
I'm blanking on the name now. And when you said Heiser, it made me think, but I can't remember. Never mind, it doesn't matter. But I was trying to think. There was a guest you guys are pursuing, and I can't remember who their name was. It might be. Yeah, Bledsoe, I think it might be.
We were trying to get Ryan Bledsoe on the show. Ryan Bledsoe and his father, Chris. I don't know if Ryan is so much of an experiencer, but Chris definitely is. And he's an abductee victim who's been contacted by an entity that presents itself to him as Mother Mary, as the Holy Spirit, but it also goes by other names like Ishtar, Hathor, being an Egyptian goddess or a Sumerian goddess. And I think he is being deceived by a real spirit. I think the information he's getting is real information. His experiences are real experiences, and that entity is really talking to him. But I think it's lying about its nature to him, but it is giving him prophecy that is currently, as we sit here on the cusp of fucking World War III, this issue with us and Iran and Israel is unfolding. This is something that this entity prophesied to him, and it said that when this comes to pass, you will see orbs that will arise out of the ocean, and they will stop this war. And that is very much in alignment with the predictions of Cliff High. Cliff High being a guy that we had a little bit of a fascination with for a time. I don't know if he's secular. I don't know what his deal is. I mean, he's a believer, but in much more of like a new age concept, I think. And I think he also suspects that God is the demiurge and all. So in my opinion, he's all fucked up. But what do I know? he has a AI, back in the day when it was like really rudimentary, a bot, and it scrapes data off the internet. It chunks data and it looks for patterns, and it studies speech, written text, or typed out text, and it determines somehow through a very strange process of detecting emotion in certain keywords in text. I'm not going to pretend that I get it, but it makes predictions, and it'll say a thing will come to pass. If that thing happens, then you could expect this other series of events to unfold. And the thing that it predicted was the podcast between Donald Trump and Joe Rogan, but it started to predict that and paint the picture that that would happen back in 2009, which is Joe Rogan's show is in its infancy, and Donald Trump is far from running for the presidency. And it said that if that came to pass, we would see a bunch of things follow. A melee, which a lot of the people that listen to Nephilim Death Squad remember that whole saga. There was supposed to be a melee in the skies. Now, a melee, as he defined it, Cliff Hype defined it, was chaos. Within these governmental systems, there was going to be contention and infighting, and everything was going to start to fall apart. We were going to see people kind of keeled over because of this great revelation that they had possibly hoped never to come to pass. I suspect that revelation maybe been the Epstein files, let's say. And around that time, there was going to be these orbs, and there was going to be a skirmish between Iran and Israel of the nuclear variety, and it was going to cause the entire world to turn on Israel because the ramifications from this altercation would be terrible for the planet. So he's looking at this. There's orbs, and he said disclosure is going to take place during this time too. And then there's another fascinating prediction from a character that was on Tony Merkel's show, which is one of my favorite shows, The Confessionals, and he said that the Holy Spirit revealed to him that after the sins of our leaders were revealed to us, that there would be a rapture, which, that's out there for the people if they believe in the rapture, pre-trib, mid-trib, whatever. I don't know what to make of it, but I do find it fascinating that, like, all of this stuff seems to, there's like, orbs, aliens, Epstein files, war with Iran, Israel, maybe the rapture, which was also in Cliff High's predictions in his data chunking machine. So yeah, there's a lot of things that are pointing to this big I don't know, what would you call it? It's a drama that's unfolding right now, and it seems like a lot of things are pointing to it.
Yeah, well, firstly, let me real quick. I apologize for the name slip because at the same time, my phone's telling me that it's moderating comments on YouTube, and I'm just trying. Like I'm looking at it, I'm like, what are they saying? So like whenever the name popped in my head, I picked the first name that I thought I heard you say that it was Heiser. But when it comes to the names, this is something that I think is somewhat important because I think when we think of these entities and it comes up with the names and people associate a name with one entity or one deity or whatever it is, these things I believe has been changing their names for centuries. And it's a very good way for them to hide what they're actually trying to do. So people associate a name with a thing. When you said ISIS, among these other things, I just think that some people get hung up on a name for an entity instead of realizing what it is that it's actually doing. Because that's one thing for sure that we've seen over the years where you can associate writings in the past of a deity or whatever you want to call them from back in the day going under one name, and you see it in another culture as another name. The exact description of what it might be, what it sounded like, what it did, and it's under another name. So I think that part's important too, that these things can manipulate you in that way, not only in appearance, I think, but also in the way that they present themselves as their name. Like they're saying a lot of similar things, but saying them to different people all over the world with different names associated with them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. One of my favorite examples is Baal Hadad, who is a Sumerian deity, and he is a storm god who is depicted as holding like this three-pronged, looks like he's clutching a fistful of lightning bolts. And then if you look at the way that Zeus is depicted, it's almost a one-to-one. It seems like the exact same entity, but just, different languages, different peoples called him different things, but he was still attributed with the same powers, like storm god, etc. So, yeah, I think they are rebranded constantly, which is why, once again, when it comes to the alien thing, if it is true that these fallen angels go by different names and different, whatever, visages from one group to another, then what's happening with the alien phenomenon is no different. It's no different. It's the same shit. It's just a little bit more complex, and it's aided by Hollywood, the whole sci-fi industry, which is just the propaganda machine. Hollywood is really a multi-trillion-dollar industry that is funded for one thing, and it's not just entertaining us. It's lying to us. It's lying to us. It's engineering our opinion of reality. That's what it's tasked with. And so, this time, unlike Sumer or unlike ancient Greek, culture, this time it has a multi-trillion-dollar propaganda machine to help it disguise itself.
Yep.
You know what I always found interesting? I would love to have sit down and had a conversation with the writers of The Simpsons. I feel like they are like so spot on with putting things in their show, and then a couple of months, years later, it happens, like pretty much 10 for 10. I don't think that's a coincidence. It was something I ignored as a kid growing up, but now we're so 25 years of the show. And then they had like Trump on the escalator in the cartoon, and then it happened in real life. And I'm like, they either have access to this esoteric plane of dimension, somebody who's, part of the writing team is connected somehow to a reality we're not, or because it's mind-blowing how accurate it's been. So I think that plays into it as like a subliminal kind of like nudge, like, yeah, we kind of already know.
Yeah, I think I saw some rumor, haven't confirmed it, and I probably won't bother to, so I was just going to spread unfounded information here on your show, but I saw somebody claim that the main writer from The Simpsons was associated with the Epstein files. Does that mean that he's getting like, coveted information from Epstein and his lackeys, or does it mean more so that reality is scripted in such a way that like you can at least call these big events because they're going to play out? I think I'm kind of famous on the show for saying that politics is theater at the highest levels, and I really do believe that. I think you can affect your local office outside of being in a stronghold like New York City or something. If you're just in the middle of fucking, I don't know, you name it, Indiana, and you're trying to affect change in your local precinct or your local school board or something, I think you have a real good chance at doing that. But I think after a certain level of influence, it just becomes scripted reality. And so I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. I mean, people suggest that it's Project Looking Glass, which is similar, I would say, to Cliff High's probability machine, is this idea that, you can have a few potential realities that you can view. I don't understand if Project Looking Glass is an actual thing that you can look at, or if it is something that spits out a likelihood of data that's going to come to pass in the near future. I think you probably could, if you had an AI that scraped the whole internet and just looked at, world events and cultural moments and things of that nature, it could feasibly say what was likely to happen next, especially if you had, I don't know, let's say people who were actively trying to bring about, prophecy from the book of Revelation. Whether or not that made the prophecy valid or not is a different story. But if you could find throughout your data scraping that this was the case and that there were those in powerful positions who were trying to move things in a direction that was going to shake up the world and result in the fulfillment of prophecy, well, then it would be really that much easier to predict what was going to happen next. But I also think there's room on the table of just channeling. An interesting example, I'm not saying that this was channeled or not, but I do think like throughout compelling pieces of media and art, a lot of times people are channeling. That's just what happens. And I don't know if they're all aware. I think the better ones are more aware that they're channeling, and some of the other ones are less aware that they're channeling, but goes back to that Marzinski thing. 80% of your thoughts are not your own, and therefore they're coming to you. Maybe they're being whispered to you. Who knows? And since it's something in the spiritual realm that's doing that whispering, maybe it is privy to things that are going to come next, not because it's all powerful and it can predict the future, but because there are legions of demons that are whispering in the ears of many influential people around the world and all trying to work towards the same goal. that might be the case. But we did an episode on the what the hell was it called? It was a hotel. I think it's near Skid Row. It's the I forget the name of it. I don't want to say Chelsea. I think it had a different name, but maybe somebody in the chat will remember. I don't know. But either way, it's famous for well, number one, the amount of deaths that have taken place, suicides that have taken place in this hotel. But one in particular was really high profile. The Cecil. Thank you, Subliminal Messenger.
Cecil. Good job, Sub.
So there's a woman in this hotel, and she is somebody who has like a history of maybe schizophrenia or bipolar. That's what it is. And she's in this hotel, and the footage, the security footage, catches her running to the elevator as if somebody's chasing her. And then she hits a bunch of buttons and she rides the elevator for a while. And every time the door opens, she peeks out like somebody's chasing her. And she even has interactions that are clearly by themselves, but it looks like she thinks she's communicating with somebody. And long story short, she vanishes and they have no footage of her anywhere. And they don't know how she accomplished this, but she's eventually found after, I believe, weeks, because people in the hotel were reporting that the water was gross. There was something with the water. It like smelled bad or it tasted bad. They found her body naked inside the water tower. And it was strange how she got there because it was a big steel panel that you had to move. There was no sign of her clothes anywhere. There was no fingerprints or anything left behind. Thank you, Top. To indicate that she even got in there on her own. And the tower lid was shut on top of her. It wasn't the whole tower lid. It was like a hatch on the tower lid that was shut on top of her, which is hard to do if you're naked, treading water, and the surface of the water was quite far from the lid, and this woman weighed like 90 pounds, so she's got to tread water and try to reach up and close this thing. It just seemed improbable. But the point of that story isn't just how strange it is, but also that I don't know how long it was before that, a movie came out. I think it was called Water Tower. And it was basically about the exact same thing. It was about the happenings of that before it actually took place. Now, am I supposed to look at the creators of the Water Tower and say, I don't know, they're complicit, or maybe that they knew that this thing would come to pass, or maybe that they were coached into saying that by somebody who knew it would come to pass? I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. I don't know what to make of The Simpsons. I don't know. I know there is such thing as predictive programming. I believe there was a Hollywood director who was just on Joe Rogan's podcast who did confirm, I believe it was predictive programming, saying that they put things in the films that, will come to happen in the future. He also confirmed that there are people in Hollywood doing rituals and sacrificing and all that other shit. So we really are getting the veil torn back in that way. And The Simpsons is egregious. So I'm sure that I lean towards there being something with The Simpsons that's beyond unwitting participant. I think many people are unwitting participants. They're getting information from the spiritual realm. Like I said, they may not even know it. They might have a favorite drug that they're doing. It's like, think about a musician who loves fucking doing heroin, while they play music. We always talk about on the podcast about how Carlos Santana, he's getting his music from Metatron. Metatron is an angel. Some people think Metatron is a fallen angel. But that's where Carlos Santana gets his jams from. So is there any reason to believe that The Simpsons, just because it's a cartoon and it's silly, it's the most prolific and might be the longest running show, period.
That's what I'm talking about. I even go back and see, like, they had an episode where a plane hit a building in a city prior to 9/11 happening. And it's like, if you go back, it's like they're 10 for 10. Like, if I was the writer and these were just thoughts I was having, like innocent creative thoughts, I'd be worried, like where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Am I being used as a vessel? Like what entity is putting these imaginative things that are somehow 9, 10 out of 10 times coming to like fruition? That would freak me out.
Yeah, no, I agree. You find it constantly though, dude. if you start looking into, I have to mention, I know I see Subliminal Messenger freaking out, but like many pieces of great works from, I don't know if it's just artwork or if it also goes into the great thought leaders of Greek culture, but they attribute a lot of their works to the Muses. This was something, and there's oracles too, right? Like you would have the priest class, and they would determine a lot of things about, what this culture was going to be doing in the future based off of the oracle. I forget what the name of the place is, the oracle at Delphi. And what was going on is they would consult the oracle about what to do, and the oracle would be the mouthpiece for these spirits, these spiritual advisors, and come to find out that the cave at Adelphi had like a not a methamphetamine. What the hell is a methane leak. There was a crack, a fissure in the cave floor, and methane was coming up, and it was filling this cave, and it was, it would induce this hypnagogic state in the oracle, and then the oracle would, through this altered state, communicate with the spiritual realm. So if you have the same phenomenon taking place in Stephen King, for example, he writes a lot of shit that seems to be like really accurate about the spiritual realm. He is like famously I think a cokehead and an alcoholic when he writes. So it's just another altered state that these people get in. And once again, just to point to Dr. Marzinski, he says that in his estimation with these schizophrenics, the certain drugs really open up that access point between them and the spiritual entity that's plaguing them. But methamphetamine in particular was the most effective at giving the spirit access to the individual, and even made it so that it was actually very difficult to stop the interaction once meth was introduced to the equation. And so there's so many, dude. There's so many of these creators in all of these things who are inebriated. They're under the influence in one way or another, and they are in these flow states where they're pulling these thoughts and this inspiration. I don't know what to make of The Simpsons, but yeah, dude, you're right. I mean, they did so much. I know some of these things. It became such a meme that eventually a lot of fake shit was being produced. AI images, because The Simpsons is very easy to replicate, of a certain scene that looked exactly like another real life moment. But the only reason those were ever created was because The Simpsons had such an unbelievable track record of predicting shit, and 9/11 being, definitely one of them. In fact, I think there was a magazine, it's probably the most famous, maybe earliest prediction, was like, I forget, it's like maybe Bart is holding a magazine and the Twin Towers are on it, and you could see like an explosion on them. And it's for like, it said something like 9, and then it was like 11 cents for the magazine, and like, that kind of shit. That was really, really, really early. But I don't know what to make of them now.
I don't know. Well, if it was something completely innocent, I think they'd be on they'd be high on the list for like people in the government to want to interview them.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is like nobody ever seems to be interviewing these dudes about that. Like if I was the creator and I was innocent in it, I'd be like, guys, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, it was a dream. I don't understand. Like it was pure coincidence, but being that it's kind of still like ignored by the government, and it just kind of still suggests that there's just so much going on behind the veil. Like who the hell knows? Like crazy shit, man.
I don't know, dude. It's a fascinating mystery. It's just one of those things that it makes this experience just a little bit cooler. I don't like to look at things and get like afraid. I just go like, fuck, that's cool. Like, over the last week, there was this, not a leak, but there's a department within the military that handles like religious complaints. It's kind of like a freedom of religion related thing. And they came out, there was 15 complainers, infantrymen. 11 of them were Christian. A couple of them were Jews, a couple of them were Muslim, a couple of them were atheists. But either way, they were debriefed, and their commanding officer said that he's just breaking the news to them that Donald Trump, this is a holy war. Donald Trump has been anointed by Jesus Christ, and this is to bring about the second coming of Christ. And so they filed complaints because I guess they thought it was inappropriate or whatever. And when I hear that, you can get scared and you can go like, oh shit, dude. But I just go like, this is kind of fucking fantastic. This is fantastic. Like, I don't believe that. I don't believe that he was anointed. I don't think this is an anointed holy war. I don't think these people should be trying to force, Jesus Christ to return or any of that shit. But I still go like, damn, this is fun.
It is. I don't. That's the crazy part, right? We talked about the entities that prey on your fear.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. Do
Yeah.
not be afraid. It says it a lot of times. Some people claim 365, other people claim, doesn't matter. It says it a whole lot of times in the Bible. Do not be afraid. So, I mean, that is what makes it fun, though, when you can not be afraid, because you're like, holy shit. Like, wow, this is amazing. And when you touched on CERN a second ago, do you know they're building a bigger one now?
I mean, I didn't know that. I only learned probably in the last few years that CERN is not the only large hadron collider. It's the biggest one, or at least previously. But there are other ones, and there's even some in, I don't know if it's Tennessee. I forget what the hell the name of the one in Tennessee is, but Oak Ridge. Yeah, Oak Ridge in Tennessee. So apparently there's more than just the one in Switzerland or
Switzerland. Yeah,
Switzerland.
It's on the border, I think, between Switzerland and I want to say the adjacent country. It actually goes under the border, whatever that one that might be. It's kind of crazy. I don't want to. I honestly, it's been 2 hours. We should probably kick the pores out and go do another 2 hours on Patreon. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
I was like, oh, you guys do that too, huh? Should have cooked him out way earlier.
No, but I do want to let you off the hook just because I know it's been a while. You've been gracious with your time, but I want to say the CERN thing. It's interesting to me because when they turned it on in 2008, that seemed to me like around the time when really strange things started to happen. That really did, like, the Mandela effect. Some people don't believe in that, but it is really weird. The Fruit of the Loom thing, like, did it have the thing or did it not have the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, and there's a lot of that. I mean, a lot of it. And when they turned it on, I think it's possible that it did have an effect on reality. Like, they're trying to open these portholes, or they did open a porthole, and it changed things around us. And if you think of it maybe in that way, it could explain some of the discrepancies and what you think, especially with the Simpsons thing. Like, who knows, dude? Like, that is crazy. Maybe they were high on meth and got a download or something and just wrote it. I don't really know, but I mean,
You know what, man? I don't want to. I struggle with this. This is something I struggle with. I don't think you should try to force God's hand.
oh,
I don't think you can. I could be wrong about that, though. I look at the way prophecy unfolds and I go, well, let's say the four horsemen, right? Like famine and war and pestilence and things like that. So, okay, mankind obviously plays a part in war, right? That's a human thing. Well, we can also create pestilence. Shout out to 2020. Famine can be manufactured. Remember when all those food production plants were burning down and the government was going around telling people to, kill their herds and burn their crops and all this other shit. So my question becomes, like, if we live in an era where you can, for the first time in history, maybe, unless you believe in like ancient technologies, angelic technologies and such, for the first time in history, you can manipulate the weather. You can create chimeric diseases in labs and release them out into the public. Or, the war machine is more dynamic and more disastrous than it ever has been. Could these visions and these revelations have been given and been pointing to a time where, like, yeah, people will be able to do this? You know what I mean? So, like, I go back and forth. I'm not too sure if it means inherently it's not real fulfillment of prophecy if they are forcing it, because I think it also is worth saying this is the first time in history they can force it. That being said, the thing that I struggle with is the more they do it, the more I welcome it. Like, okay, like if you're going to tell me CERN isn't about photographing the elusive Higgs boson particle. And it's really about opening portals to alternate realities, which I don't even know if I believe in that. Alternate realities, bringing entities into this realm, pulling things from our reality, adding things that were never there to our reality. And this is all going, I hope so. That's the thing that I struggle with is I hope it is, dude. If you tell me that underground there's an army of reptile creatures that are infiltrating our media, they're taking positions as news anchormen, and sometimes the skin thing glitches out and you could see and I fucking hope so, dude. And I don't know if that's okay. I don't know if that's all right. I don't know if God looks at me and goes, dude, what? You can't hope so. But for some reason, it's just the way he made me. I'm not afraid of it, but it's even beyond being afraid. I'm like, you mean to tell me that my life is not just about clocking in and clocking out, that it's not just about trying to dig myself out of a predatory loan that I accepted from Jewish bankers, that It's not just about eating goy slop until they have to cut my legs off from diabetes. You mean to tell me there's reptile men, and that they're firing up a giant ring underground that fucking glitches reality about? I hope so, dude. I really do. And that's probably my number one struggle is I hope God can forgive me for, if I'm not supposed to be looking at it that way, for consistently looking at it that way.
I think we're at the point of reality where that makes most sense. Like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. There's a bunch of reptilians underground that are doing all this, and it's an answer. Like we finally have an answer to focus on.
Yeah, and I go, if that's the case, let me kill one. Just one. I'm not saying that I got to take on like an army or that I got to save the day or any of that shit. Vengeance isn't mine. I'm not the hero in this story. God is the hero. He already wins. This is all going let me just kill one, though. Just one, dude, in like a really cool moment. Like I'd bury a scimitar in its spot, something. Please, that's it. That's all I want to do. If there are alien greys out there, let me crush one of their soft skulls underneath the weight of my fist before I leave this place. Not for any other reason, not for hatred or vengeance, because that sounds fucking cool, man. And can I just have some cool stuff?
I give you that. It would be kind of cool to bag one of them and be like, look, bring the head and be like, I fucking told you.
That's it, man. That's it. I was saying on Twitter the other day, I'm gonna be among the first wave of humans who kills an alien. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to send them packing. I'm not going to be the hero of this story. But like when we pass away and as we're sitting there in this heavenly realm and we got eternity ahead of us and we're reminiscing, I just want to be able to say like, I wasn't the first one, but I was in the first wave. And I remember the way it felt when its head collapsed under my fist. And it was pretty cool. And that's it. I just want that bragging right. Other than that, however this goes, it goes. I'm not afraid of it.
Do not be afraid and put aliens' heads on pikes.
That's it, man.
Right?
Amen.
All right, listen. I would love for you to stay, but I know I've already asked too much of you.
This was good, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you did, because I really did. This is something special for me. I'm not trying to glaze you or nothing. It really is. It's really cool to have you on. I'm really appreciative that you took the time to do it and that you actually let us go for 2 hours. So it really has been fantastic, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Yeah, I know Drew does too. Listen, Drew is somewhat new. If you can't tell, he's still not. He doesn't have all of the context of everything that we spoke about.
Can I just say,
I'm transitioning.
I want to say that every once in a while I could look down and I could see that this was like, I want to say new, but like the way that it was getting framed out for Drew, I recognize the look of an individual when like a thing gets connected to another thing. A thought gets connected to another thought. I saw that happening, and I was like, "Fuck yeah, man!" Because that's what I thrive off of. My only hope in my show is that I can express a thing in ways that are understandable to other people. Because that's all I want. I just want people to get it. I'm not saying I'm right, but if I can at least get them to understand how I'm thinking, then like my job is done.
delivered it in a very well spoken and concise way because I could see him. I could see the lights going on a little bit. And it happens from show to show, but periodically, like when there's things that he hasn't had, maybe he knows part of it, maybe he doesn't know part of it. And someone comes on and explains a thing and it sort of comes together and you can kind of see the light go off on him. And I'm like, we're getting him there. He's getting there. He's got.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Rejoice, Drew. We all share in one common thing, and it's degrees of not knowing shit. Even if I appear like I know something, it's just maybe a louder version of not knowing shit. The more that I learn, the more that I come to understand I don't know shit. So that's yeah, we're all in the same boat, dude.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Has been repeating herself. So
Hello,
I figured I would let you see this one just because it's for you. She's been saying this.
She's very consistent, if nothing else.
Yes, that is true. Do you want to add anything else before we get out of here, brother?
No, I mean, just thank you for having me on, and thank you for supporting the show, especially early on when we were first trying to get our legs about us. Same thing to pretty much everybody I saw in the chat. They're all people that have been helping us get along as we've built this ship as it's been going. You know what I mean? That's kind of what you end up doing, I think, with a podcast, unless you're backed by the state of Israel or some shit like that. You don't
$7,000.
Yeah, $7,000. And by the way, by this time, I've discovered it costs a lot fucking more than that. If you want to, I don't know, have a lot of lights and a nice microphone. But yeah, man, thank you to not only you guys but also to the chat. I recognize all these homies, and so it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it really has been. It's been a real privilege to watch you guys grow too. I'm really glad to see it, and I hope you guys keep crushing. I know it. The bad part is I ordered an NDS hat and it didn't get here in time. I was hoping to wear it for the show.
Which one did you get?
The yellow outline with the symbol on it.
Yes, yeah, classic. Yep.
Yeah, that's a nice one. I was unfortunate it didn't show up in time, but either way, I really appreciate your time. Drew, you want to add anything before we get out of here?
No, just to build off of what you said, man, it was a great experience being part of the show, and I definitely learned a lot, and I love the artistic way in which you express yourself, and I'm definitely going to be a new subscriber to the show, and yeah, man, it was a great experience. I hope we could do it again someday.
Well, thank you. I think you mispronounced autistic, but I'll take it. Yeah, I look forward to I guess brainwashing you, but it's fun, man. I can promise you, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, hell yeah, for sure.
Present makes more sense than what we're told on the mainstream. I'll just say that.
Well, thank you. That's I'll take that all day.
All right. Well, you guys have a good night. That was the shit show. This was a huge honor. Thank you, David, for coming on. You guys have a good night.